Have you ever noticed how silence unsettles people? How the moment you withhold your words, the very moment you stop feeding an argument, what once looked like confidence in others begins to crack. Their voices falter, their certainty weakens, and their boldness dissolves into unease, and all you did was remain silent. Seneca once wrote, "Silence is a lesson in itself." He understood something most of us forget. Silence isn't absence. Silence is presence. It's a kind of energy that speaks louder than our words, and when you learn to use it, your silence becomes more powerful than any argument, more commanding than any speech, and more unsettling than any shout. Think of the last time you were in a heated moment. Someone insulted you, provoked you, maybe even betrayed you. They expected a fight. They expected a storm. They thought they knew your next move. But instead of shouting, instead of defending, you said nothing, and suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. They were forced to confront, not your anger, but their own weakness. This is the essence of silence. It flips the mirror. Words distract. They scatter energy like sparks. But silence gathers energy, compresses it, and directs it inward, toward the person expecting your reaction. In that quiet, they hear their own voice too clearly, and for many people that is terrifying. Because most people speak not to communicate, but to escape their own thoughts. Seneca believed that a man enslaved to the opinions of others is never free. And when you rush to defend yourself, to prove yourself, to answer every accusation, you're handing them your freedom. You're saying, "I value your opinion of me more than I value my own peace." But when you stay silent, you do the opposite. You declare, without words, that you are free, that you no longer require their understanding or their approval. Picture it like this. A storm rages across the valley. Trees bend, branches break, water floods the ground. But high above the storm, the mountain stands unmoved. It doesn't argue with the storm. It doesn't shout back at the thunder. It simply endures. And by enduring, it wins. That mountain is silence. Most people think silence is weakness. They assume you're too timid to speak, too unprepared to answer. But that's because they misunderstand power. True power doesn't need to prove itself. The lion doesn't roar every minute to remind the jungle who it is. The ocean doesn't explain its strength to every pebble on the shore. Silence is the confidence of those who know they don't need validation. And here's the paradox that unnerves people. Silence creates questions. The moment you withhold your words, others begin to fill in the blanks. Did you not hear them? Do you not care? Did they lose your respect? Are you stronger than they thought? Their confidence turns into doubt. Their doubt turns into fear. And that fear grows louder with every passing second of your silence. Seneca would tell you that silence is not passive. It is not retreat. It is not surrender. Silence is active. It is choice. It is mastery. Because the one who cannot remain silent, the one who must always argue, always justify, always explain, that person is already enslaved to the noise around them. But the one who can hold their tongue, who can stay still, who can endure misunderstanding without flinching, that is the person who holds true power. Think about the last time someone tried to bait you into a fight. They threw insults, hoping to draw out your anger. They made accusations, expecting your defense. But when you stayed silent, they felt the weight of their own words. They were left to wrestle with their own bitterness. And in that moment, they lost power. Not till you shouted them down, but because you refused to be dragged into their storm. Silence terrifies people, because silence is unpredictable. Words follow patterns. Arguments have counters. But silence leaves them unprepared. Silence forces them to face the echo of their own thoughts. And when they are alone with those thoughts, they begin to unravel. Seneca lived in a world where words could spark wars, where accusations could end lives. He knew that silence was not just wisdom, it was survival. And in our world today, filled with constant noise, endless chatter, and voices demanding your attention, silence has become even more powerful. When you remain silent, you rise above the noise. You step outside the storm. You claim a strength that few possess. But silence is not only for battles with others. It is also for battles within yourself. How often do we run from silence, filling every quiet space with distractions, music, scrolling, endless chatter? We fear files because silence forces us to listen to our doubts, our regrets, our longings. Yet Seneca would tell us that this is where growth begins. Only in silence do we hear ourselves clearly. So the next time you are tempted to explain yourself, to prove your worth to those who do not see it, remember this: silence is not emptiness. Silence is strength. Silence is freedom. And sometimes silence says more than words ever could. And when you choose silence, when you let it linger, you will notice something subtle but powerful. Their confidence fades. The certainty in their voice breaks. Their words begin to betray them. And what once looked like dominance turns into fear. All because you mastered what most cannot endure: silence. There's a strange thing about silence that most people never realize. It magnifies presence. The less you say, the more people feel you. The quieter you are, the more your energy fills the room. These words often shrink us. They scatter our strength into fragments, but silence gathers all of it, holding it close, until it becomes undeniable. Think about it. Have you ever sat across from someone who didn't rush to answer, who listened deeply, and when you finished speaking, they paused? That pause, that silence, made you lean in. It made you wonder what they were thinking. It made their eventual words feel heavier, more meaningful. That is the gravity of silence. It turns the ordinary into something weighty. And those who can master it command respect without ever raising their voice. Seneca warned against wasting energy on empty disputes. He knew that many arguments aren't really about truth. They're about ego. They're about one person trying to prove superiority over another. And in those situations, silence is devastating. Because when you do not play the game, you win by default. You show that their attempts to provoke you are beneath your dignity. And in that moment, their so-called confidence dissolves into frustration, even fear. Here's a picture to hold in your mind. A fire needs fuel. Without fuel, it dies. When someone throws accusations, when they insult you, they are throwing sparks, hoping you'll add fuel with words, your outrage, your defenses. But when you stay silent, you starve the fire. It flickers, it weakens, it dies. And the one who tried to ignite it? They are left standing in their own smoke, choking on their own bitterness. There's a reason why in every culture, silence has been tied to wisdom. The elders in tribes, the monks in monasteries, the sages who retreat to the mountains. They understand that silence is not emptiness. It is depth. And those who speak less often reveal more, because their words are born not out of reaction, but reflection. But this is where silence becomes difficult. It is not easy to hold your tongue when someone challenges you. The ego wants to shout back. The heart wants to defend itself. The pride wants to prove its worth. Yet Seneca would remind you, restraint is strength. He said, "He who is brave is free." And what is braver than refusing to be controlled by provocation? To choose silence is to prove that your emotions do not own you. Imagine two men in a marketplace, in Rome. One insults the other, trying to spark a public fight. The crowd waits for blood. But the man targeted does not reply. He looks calmly and walks away. The crowd laughs at the insulter instead, whispering, if his words had weight, he would have drawn blood. But they drew nothing. The silent man's dignity grew. The insulters shrank. This is not just theory. It was daily life in Seneca's Rome, and it remains true today. People often confuse loudness with power. They think the one who dominates the room with noise holds authority. But real authority doesn't need to shout. Real authority doesn't beg to be noticed. It is felt. And silence is the clearest proof of authority, because silence says, I am secure enough not to perform for you. There's also another side to silence that unsettles people. It cannot be measured. If you shout, they can measure your anger. If you explain, they can measure your defense. But silence? Silence is infinite. It offers no limits, no edges, no clear meaning. And the human mind hates uncertainty. It fills the void with fear. It creates stories. Maybe he's planning something. Maybe she's stronger than I thought. Maybe I'm the fool. Silence turns their own imagination against them. This is why leaders throughout history have used silence as a weapon. A general who does not respond to threats unnerves his enemy. A king who listens more than he speaks intimidates his court. And in daily lay, you can use silence in the same way. Not to manipulate, but to remain unshaken. To remind yourself and others that your peace cannot be purchased by noise. Seneca believed in economy of speech. He believed that most words wasted energy, and energy was life's most precious resource. He warned against scattering our lives into meaningless conversations, endless disputes, shallow chat. Instead, he urged us to conserve our energy for what truly mattered: virtue, wisdom, and inner freedom. And silence in this sense is not just an absence of words. It is a discipline. It is a way of preserving life itself. So how do you practice silence in a noisy world? It begins with small choices. The choice not to answer every message immediately. The choice to pause before reacting. The choice to walk away from fruitless arguments. Each moment of silence is like a drop of water. And together those drops carve rivers of strength into your soul. And here is the secret that few understand. Silence is not just a shield. It is a mirror. The way people react to your silence reveals who they are. The insecure grow anxious. The guilty grow defensive. The arrogant grow louder. But the wise grow still with you. They respect it. They understand it. They may even thank you for it. Silence shows you, without words, who truly understands you. This is why Seneca and the Stoics believed in withdrawing from the noise of the crowd. Not because they hated people, but because they knew wisdom grows best in quiet soil. Noise drowns wisdom. Silence feeds it. And the same is true for you. If you want to hear your own voice, you must stop filling every moment with others. So the next time someone demands your words, ask yourself, do they deserve them? Will your words add value or only feed their ego? And if the answer is no, then let your silence be your yore. Because silence has a way of saying the one thing you can never express with words: I am free. And when you live with that freedom, something extraordinary happens. The noise of the world fades. The urgency to explain yourself fades. The compulsion to defend fades. And in that fading, you discover a power that most people will never taste. The power to remain unmoved. That is why your silence turns their confidence into fear. Because in silence, you prove what they secretly fear the most, that they have no power over you. If you want to truly understand the force of silence, watch what happens in relationships. Silence exposes the truth of people more than their words ever will. When you no longer rush to defend yourself, when you stop trying to explain your every move, when you let the air grow still, pay attention to how people respond. Some will panic. They'll demand answers. They'll press harder. They'll grow louder. Why? Because your silence unsettles their control. They've built their confidence on your predictable reactions. They think they know how you'll respond. But silence removes the script. It forces them to face their own uncertainty. And in that gap, their confidence starts to erode. Others will retreat. They'll take your silence as rejection, as disinterest, as judgment. They'll crumble under it because they've never learned to be comfortable without constant validation. To them, silence is andere. They need noise to feel alive, to feel secure. When you don't give it, their fear grows. And then, there are a rare few who will respect your silence. They will understand it. They will not rush to fill it. They will sit with it, with you, without needing to break it. These are the ones who know that silence is not distance but depth. Seneca would say these are the people worth keeping, because they don't fear your silence. They honor it. This is how silence reveals the quality of relationships. Words can be faked, charm can be performed, but silence cannot be pretended. The way someone reacts to your silence tells you more about their character than hours of conversation ever could. But silence doesn't only test others. It tests you. Sitting in silence is one of the hardest disciplines in the modern world. Our world trains us to fill every moment with noise. We check our phones, laws endlessly, surround ourselves with constant chatter, because silence reveals something we often don't want to face: ourselves. When you're silent, the distractions fade. And what's left? Your doubts, your regrets, your insecurities. This is why people run from silence. It feels like a mirror too sharp to look into. But Seneca would tell you that mirror is the very tool you need. Because only when you can face yourself in silence, without flinching, do you begin to master yourself. Mastery begins not with conquering others, but with conquering your own restless mind. And silence is the battlefield. In silence, you learn to control your impulses. In silence, you train your emotion. In silence, you discover that not every reaction is necessary. Not every word is worth speaking. Not every battle is worth fighting. Seneca warned that life is wasted not because it is short, but because we squander it. And one of the greatest ways we squander life is with endless noise, arguments that go nowhere, conversations that mean nothing, explanations given to people who never cared to understand in the first place. But when you embrace silence, you stop wasting life on what doesn't matter. You preserve your strength for what does. Consider how silence works in leadership. A leader who speaks too often loses authority. His words lose weight. But a leader who chooses his words carefully, who allows silence to hang in the room before he speaks, adds power effortlessly. His silence creates anticipation, and when he finally speaks, people listen. This is not an accident. This is the natural law of silence. The less it is used, the more powerful it becomes. And the same is true in your own life. When you stop explaining yourself at every turn, when you stop feeding every argument, when you allow silence to be your shield, people start to value your words more. They listen when you finally do speak. They know your silence has already said enough. But silence is not only external, it is also internal. Seneca practiced daily reflection, moments of stillness where he withdrew into himself. He believed that in silence the soul finds its direction. Noise pulls us outward, scattering us in 1,000 directions. Silence gathers us inward, pointing us toward what matters. Without silence we live borrowed lives, always reacting, always chasing. With silence we reclaim our lives as our own. Think of silence as the calm surface of a lake. When the water is still, you can see your reflection clearly. But when it's disturbed, when it's noisy, the image shatters. Most of us live with shattered reflections, too busy, too loud, too distracted to see ourselves. Silence clears the water, and when you look into it, you see who you truly are. But silence is not passive. It demands courage. To remain silent when accused is courage. To remain silent when provoked is courage. To remain silent when the world demands noise is courage. And courage is the heart of Stoicism. Seneca would say that in silence you prove not to others, but to yourself, that you are free. Free from impulse. Free from ego. Free from the chains of needing to be understood. And that freedom is what others fear. Because when you are free, you cannot be controlled. You cannot be manipulated. You cannot be bent by noise. Your silence becomes a fortress. And from that fortress, you look out at the world, not with fear, but with calm certainty. This is why your silence turns their confidence into fear. It's not because silence attacks them. It's because silence exposes them. It forces them to stand alone with their doubts, with their words, with their insecurities. And in that stillness, they realize something they cannot bear, that they have no hold on you. So the next time you are tempted to defend yourself, to fight back, to prove them wrong, remember the power of silence. Remember that silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you have nothing to prove. And in that silence, you will discover a strength that words can never give you. The strength to remain unmoved. There's a hidden beauty in silence that few ever discover. It outlasts everything. Words fade. Arguments get forgotten. Even victories are short-lived. But silence leaves an imprint. Long after you've walked away, long after the noise has died down, people still remember your silence. It echoes in their minds. It unsettles their hearts. It makes them question, again and again, what your silence meant. This is why Seneca believed silence was not emptiness, but fullness. It is not a void. It is a vessel. And what fills that vessel is not your anger, not your defense, not your ego, but your strength. Silence is a shield you carry everywhere, invisible yet undeniable. Think of a courtroom. The accuser makes their case loudly, passionately. The defendant rises, expected to counter every point. But instead he pauses. He lets the silence hang. The room grows tense. The accuser begins to fidget, wondering if their own words betrayed them. That pause, that silence, speaks louder than 100 rebuttals. It makes everyone in the room listen more closely. This is the law of silence. It multiplies power. It sharpens attention. It magnifies presence. And yet, most people squander this gift. They fill every gap with noise. They can't bear the weight of silence. They fear it will make them look weak. They fear it will make them look ignorant. But Seneca would argue the opposite. He would say, "It is the noisy who reveal their weakness, the loud who reveal their ignorance." For the wise know that truth does not always need a defender. Sometimes it only needs time. There's another dimension to silence. Its role in peace. How many conflicts could be avoided if silence had been chosen instead of pride? How many friendships, marriages, families could have been saved by one moment of restraint? Seneca warned us that anger is short madness, and silence is often the cure. Silence interrupts the cycle before it consumes us. Imagine two people in a heated argument. One throws words like daggers. The other wants to respond, wants to strike back, but chooses silence. The silence unsettles the first, until the storm exhausts itself. And when the shouting ends, who looks stronger? Not the one who wasted his breath, but the one who stood unshaken. Silence saved not only dignity but peace. But let's go deeper. Silence is not just a tactic. It is a philosophy. It is the practice of choosing not to be enslaved by the noise of the world, because the world will always demand your reaction. It will always provoke you, accuse you, distract you. And if you give yourself to that, you will never live your own life. You will live theirs. Seneca reminded us, life is long, if you know how to use it. But how much of life is wasted in noise, defending ourselves to those who never cared? arguing with people who never listen, explaining our worth to those who never valued it. Silence gives us back that time. Silence is how we reclaim our lives from the endless demands of others. And when you learn to live in silence, something profound happens. You become untouchable. Not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can control you. Insults lose their power. Accusations lose their sting. Noise loses its grip. Your silence turns every attempt to shake you into dust. This is why silence frightens people. Because it reveals what they cannot control. It reminds them that their words, their confidence, their bravado are fragile. They expected you to fight, but you didn't. They expected you to defend, but you wouldn't. They expected you to break, but you stayed whole. And in that moment, their confidence transformed into fear. But silence does something else too. It inspires. Those who witness it, those who feel it, begin to wonder if they too can find such strength. They begin to see that power does not always roar. It often whispers, or better yet, it doesn't need to whisper at all. It simply is. Seneca lived 2,000 years ago, but his wisdom is timeless. He knew that silence was not just a tactic for debate or survival, but a path to freedom. Freedom from anger. Freedom from distraction. Freedom from the endless noise of life. And when you embrace that freedom, you discover what most people never will: peace. So here is the question I leave you with. How much of your life are you giving away in noise? How much of your energy is spent proving yourself to those who don't matter? How much of your peace is wasted in arguments that will never end? What if instead you chose silence? What if you let your actions speak? What if you let your calm presence unsettle their noise? What if you learned, as Seneca did, that silence is its weakness, but wisdom, not retreat, but mastery? Because when you choose silence, you do more than protect your peace. You change the balance of power. You expose the insecurity behind their confidence. You reveal the fear hidden beneath their noise. And you remind them of a truth they cannot escape: that the one who controls himself is stronger than the one who controls others. Your silence is not empty. It is full. It is strength. It is freedom. And when you carry it with you, you walk through the world like the mountain before the storm, unmoved, unafraid. That is why your silence turns their confidence into fear. And that is why, in the end, silence is not the absence of power. It is its highest form.